At 6:42 a.m., my phone buzzed on the kitchen table. Linda's text blinked on the screen. Plans changed. You're not coming on the cruise. Emily wants her real dad. By noon, my marriage was over. I stared at the screen as if it might blink and apologize. Behind me, the coffee pot hissed and clicked, scorching the last inch I hadn't poured. The AM radio muttered a farm report from Cedar Rapids. Outside, the maple by the driveway shivered in the morning wind, its leaves skittering across the concrete like they had somewhere urgent to be. I read the text over and over. Same words. Same punctuation. Same casual cruelty. Linda had sent it like she was canceling a dentist appointment. I didn't reply. I set the phone face down on the table and watched it vibrate again, another message trying to claw through the wood. I didn't pick it up. Instead, I sank into the chair at the head of the table, the one I always claimed, the one facing the window. Linda used to call it your spot. The coffee went cold. I didn't notice. 14 years ago, I'd moved into this house on East Locust Street in Davenport with a couch, a toolbox, and a promise. Emily was 12 then, a skinny kid with braces and eyes always watching. Her real dad, Rick Donnelly, had been absent more than he was present. That first night on the back steps, beer sweating in our hands, Linda had said, "It's just us. We're a family now. We're a family." She said it a lot over the years. Whenever money came up, especially when I paid for Emily's braces, she'd squeeze my arm and say, "Your money is our money." When I dipped into savings for Emily's used Honda after she got into Iowa State, she said, "This is what dads do." When I set up the auto debit for the cruise the Mississippi River anniversary trip she'd been hinting at for months, Linda kissed my cheek and said, "We deserve this." But the text didn't say we. It said my real family. The phone buzzed again. I finally stood, walked to the sink, and poured the coffee down the drain without tasting it. The mug clinked hard against the porcelain, as if angry at me for wasting it. I rinsed it slowly, watching the steam curl and vanish. When I picked up the phone again, it wasn't another text. It was a voicemail. Linda's voice died fast. Already annoyed hit me before I pressed play. "Mark, don't make this into a thing. It's just Emily asked for this. You understand, right? Call me when you've calmed down." Calm down. I leaned against the counter and closed my eyes. I saw Emily at 12, sprawled at this same table with her math homework, crying because Rick hadn't shown again. I remembered pulling out the chair next to her, not the head chair, and saying, "Okay, kiddo, let's do this together." I remembered the crooked, relieved smile she gave me, like she'd been holding her breath. I played the voicemail again. The second time, Linda's voice sounded practiced, rehearsed. I didn't call back. By 9:30, I was supposed to drive to Dubuque for a dealership visit. I pulled on my jacket, grabbed my keys, and paused in the hallway where family photos hung. One caught my Aja refinancing day snapshot. Linda and Emily sat on the couch. I stood slightly off to the side, hand on the back cushion, like I didn't belong in the frame. I'd never noticed that before. At the dealership, I shook hands, talked numbers, nodded when necessary. I missed a question and had to ask them to repeat it. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it, buzzed again. And again. On the drive home, I pulled into a Casey's, sat in the truck with the engine idling, and let the phone ring until it stopped. The silence afterward felt heavy, like a door shutting somewhere I couldn't reach. I thought about calling Tom from the VFW, my sister, in Moline. Even Rick Donnelly to ask what he thought he was doing, stepping back into our lives like a guest, noticing the bill. Instead, I drove home. The house was too quiet. Linda had left early for the airport, leaving the bed made tight and flat, like a hotel. I sat at the table again in the head chair, staring at the empty place settings. I imagined Linda and Emily, on the cruise deck, wind in their hair, Rick leaning on the railing like he'd earned the view. My phone buzzed. Emily this time. "Please respect our space." I stared until the letters blurred. I didn't throw the phone or swear. I just turned it face down, pushed it a few inches away, like something too hot to touch. The AM radio clicked. To the news, a story about river levels, about boats, departures and returns. I stayed longer than I meant, listening, breathing, letting the hurt settle into something heavier, steadier, something that didn't need to shout. That was the moment it stopped being about the cruise. That was the moment I realized it wasn't a misunderstanding or a bad morning. It was a line they'd been inching toward for years, while I paid the bills and smiled for photos. I pushed the chair in under the table, cleared a space, and silenced the notifications. I didn't sleep much that night. Not the tossing and turning kind, eyes closed, brain walking in circles. Every time I drifted off, those words came back. My real family. Small like grit, under a contact lens, impossible to ignore. At 5:30, I gave up. Shaved, dressed, made coffee again. This time, I drank it standing. The house felt different in the morning light, like it was waiting for instructions. I checked my phone out of habit. 3 missed calls from Linda. 2 voicemails. I didn't listen. On the drive to work, the AM radio faded in and out a farm report. Then interest rates. I thought about the word rates the way a man thinks about something unavoidable, something you can't argue with, only prepare for. At the office, I lasted until 10 o'clock before my hands started to shake. I told my assistant I needed to step out and drove straight to Davenport Community Credit Union. I'd been banking there since before Linda. Before Emily. Before all of this. Same parking lot, same squeaky door. Susan, according to her badge, smiled like she always did. "Morning, Mark. What can I help you with?" "I need to look at my accounts," I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. She pulled everything up without fuss, checking savings, auto debits. I watched the screen scroll. Mortgage, utilities, insurance. And there it was, the cruise payment, scheduled like clockwork. All in my name. "Everything okay?" Susan asked. I nodded, just making sure. Back in my truck, I spread the printouts across my lap. The paper smelled faintly of toner and coffee. I stared at the numbers until they stopped feeling like accusations and started feeling like information. Owned, cold, useful, precise. That night, I didn't go home right away. I pulled into the VFW on West 3rd Street. The parking lot was half full. Inside, the lights were low, the air heavy with fried onions and old stories. I ordered a beer and sat at the far end of the bar. Walt Prendergast slid onto the stool next to me without asking. 80 if he was a day, navy cap worn soft as felt. He gave me a sideways glance. "You look like hell," he said. "Feel worse," I replied. I didn't tell him everything, just enough. The text, the cruise, the weight of it all. Walt sipped his beer and nodded once. "People don't change. They just get more honest when they think they've won." I stared into my glass. I don't want to blow things up. Then don't build yourself something new. Somewhere they don't have a key. That stuck. At home, I opened the filing cabinet in the spare room, the metal one that screeched when you pulled the drawer too fast. Inside were years of receipts and folders, what my dad had taught me to keep. Brace's paperwork, Emily's name, my signature. The mechanic's invoice when her Honda needed a transmission. Checks for her college fund, small, steady, years long. Skipping lunches to make deposits. Linda had always said it was sweet, necessary. We're a family. Then I found something newer, transfers I didn't recognize at first. Small, regular, moved quietly into an account with Emily's name. Not illegal, not large, just hidden, quiet. I sat back and laughed once, short and surprised. Not anger, clarity. The phone buzzed on the desk. I ignored it. Buzzed again. I flipped it over and watched the screen light up, then go dark. The next morning, I called the cruise line. The woman was polite, uncurious. "Reason for cancellation?" she asked. "I'm no longer a passenger," I said. "In more ways than one." She processed it without comment. That afternoon, I called the attorney recommended by the credit union. We met the next day. Younger than I expected, tie loose, desk cluttered with files. "House is titled solely in your name," he said. "You can sell." "What about my wife?" "She lives there," he said. "That's not the same thing." I drove home slowly. At the table again, head chair, papers spread out, phone face down, silent. I wasn't angry, not yet, just tired. And for the first time, certain that what I'd been calling patience was really permission. I stacked the folders neatly, slid the chair in. Tomorrow, I'd make a call. I waited a full day, not out of doubt, but to hear my own thoughts without Linda's voice climbing over them. Silence does that. It gives you room to see what you've been avoiding. The realtor answered on the second ring. Karen Whitfield, Bondorf. I'd met her once years ago at a neighborhood barbecue. "I'm thinking of selling," I said. She didn't ask why, just for the address. 2 days later, she walked through the house, notebook in hand. I kept my hands in my pockets while she tapped walls and windows. The place looked smaller than I remembered, as if it had already begun letting go of me. "Your wife knows?" she asked carefully. She's traveling, I said. I'll handle it. Karen nodded. We can move fast if you want, but if she contests, it could get loud. I'm used to loud, I said. I'm done with noise. That night, the phone rang while I packed old work shirts. Linda's name lit the screen. I didn't answer. Rang again, and again. The vibration walked the phone across the dresser, trying to escape. A voicemail came, then another. One I listened to. Her voice had sharpened. Mark, stop this. You're embarrassing me. Rick's right here. He thinks you're overreacting. Rick, of course. I deleted the message and powered the phone off. The offer came faster than I expected. Young couple Ben and Alyssa Morales. Rock Island Arsenal. First baby on the way. VA loan needed to move before month's end. Karen hesitated. They're asking a little off the price. I thought of the dining table, the head chair, the way I'd always slid it back in. Tell them yes, I said. Signing day was quiet, just me, the title agent, and the hum of fluorescent lights. My hand shook once on the last page. Then it didn't. As I stood, the phone buzzed. Emily, Dad, Mark. Please don't do anything drastic. I stared long enough for it to sink, then typed, I'm doing what I should have done a long time ago. I packed the truck that night. Only what mattered. I left the rest exactly where it was. When I pulled out of the driveway before dawn, the house looked the same as it always had, solid, quiet, already belonging to someone else. They were somewhere on the river, raising a glass. I drove west, watching the sunrise, finally breathing again. They came back on a Tuesday. I know because Karen texted me at 3:18 p.m. 3 words. No punctuation. They're there now. I was sitting in a diner just outside vinyl booths, coffee tasting like it had only dreamed of being coffee. I didn't respond right away. I set the phone down, folded my hands, stared at the napkin dispenser like it might explain something. Then I picked the phone up and waited. Linda called first. I didn't answer. 5 minutes later. Emily. Still nothing. Karen filled in the rest later. Calm and precise. Like a realtor describing weather damage instead of lives unraveling. Linda had pulled into the driveway laughing. Suitcase in the trunk. Emily behind her. Sunglasses on, phone in hand. At first, they thought it was funny, some unknown car. The lawn trimmed differently. A new planter by the door. Then Linda tried the key. The knob rattled like it might apologize, then didn't. She stepped back, staring at the house like it had personally betrayed her. She called my name, then started dialing. Ben Morales opened the door halfway, chain still on. Polite, apologetic. He explained they'd just moved in, gave his name, asked if he could help. Linda laughed a short, sharp sound and told him he was in her house. Ben asked what she meant. That's when Linda started yelling. Alyssa came up behind him, hand on her stomach. Emily froze on the walkway. Phone down, face pale. Karen said it was the silence that got to her most, the half-second when Emily looked around, waiting for a punch that never came. The police arrived. 2 officers. One older, clearly wishing he were anywhere else. Paperwork, names, dates. The older officer turned to Linda. Ma'am, whose name is on the deed? Karen said. Linda didn't answer immediately. That pause, that's when it landed. Linda called again. I answered on the 4th ring. Mark, she said, breathless. What did you do? I leaned back in the booth, watched a semi roll past. Somewhere, a car alarm chirped and stopped. I sold the house, I said. You can't do that, she snapped. That's our home. It was my house, I said. You just lived in it. Threats, court, protests. Linda's voice sped up, Rick's agreement humming in the background. Then Emily. She didn't yell. That hurt more. I didn't think you'd really do it, she said, voice cracking on. Really? I didn't think you'd really mean what you said, I replied, steady. Long pause. Linda, muttering my name like it was a curse. I raised you, I said finally. I didn't rent a place in your life. Emily didn't answer. The call ended. I finished my coffee, bitter now. That night, I sat in the small rental near the river. Nothing fancy. Ben and Alyssa had left a card in the mailbox, a thank you note, ultrasound picture tucked inside. I sat at the table, imagined the old dining room, the head chair, the place where I'd tried to hold everything together. For the first time, the chair was empty, and it didn't feel like loss. They filed a complaint a week later. Not divorce, not yet. Linda went after the house, like yelling could rewind time. I got served at the rental on a Friday afternoon. Paper stiff. Official, my name spelled correctly for once. The Scott County Courthouse smelled of old books and disinfectant. Voices dropped without asking. I wore the same blazer I'd worn to funerals and dealership dinners. Nothing fancy. Clean. I carried a manila envelope heavy with memory. Linda arrived 10 minutes late. Heels clicking too loud. Emily followed, eyes down, clutching herself. Rick Donnelly trailed behind, hands in pockets. Smile too easy. Mediator glanced at the file once. Let's keep this simple, she said. Property discussion only. Linda jumped in. He abandoned us. Sold our home out from under us. My daughter was humiliated. Mediator held up a hand. Mr. Halverson, your turn. I waited. Hardest part letting her words pile up. Linda spoke of sacrifice, promises. Rick nodded. When it was my turn, I set the envelope on the table. Soft, solid thump. I didn't abandon anyone, I said. Calm. Even, I stopped paying for a life I wasn't allowed to be part of. Documents slid forward. Deed, mortgage statements, cruise receipts, auto debit confirmations, dates circled in pen. Money isn't everything. Linda scoffed. You said it was when it was mine, I replied. Mediator read slowly, deliberately, looked at Linda. The property is solely titled in Mr. Halverson's name. That's not fair. We were married. Yes, she said, but marriage doesn't change ownership records by itself. Rick leaned forward. I'm her father. Emily deserved that house. I looked at him. Really? Same grin he'd had years ago at the barbecue. Borrowing money, promising to pay it back. You mean like child support? I asked. Silence. Emily looked up, recognition in her eyes. Mediator cleared throat. Legally, Mr. Halverson acted within his rights. Linda's face flushed. So he just gets away with it. I didn't get away, I said. I paid for 14 years. No applause. No gavel. But something shifted. Linda slumped. Rick leaned back. Emily stared at her hands. Mediator closed the file. No standing to challenge the sale. We're done. Outside, sun bright on courthouse steps. I stood, breathing air that felt earned. Emily emerged last. I didn't know about all of it, she said quietly. I know, I replied. And I did. Knowing now matters. She nodded. No hug. No apology. Not yet. I walked to my truck alone, envelope lighter than it had been going in. The river was low that fall, sliding around rocks instead of over. I learned to sit on the bank most mornings, thermos and cheap folding chair, watching the Mississippi wake up slow, honest, without apology. The rental was small. 1 bedroom, table for 2, usually just me. Radio worked if you turned the dial just right. I like that. Things that require patience tend to tell the truth. I didn't hear from Linda for weeks. When I did, it was a short email about mail forwarding and a bill. I forwarded it to my attorney. Silence. I knew how to use it now. Emily texted once in October. Can we talk sometime? I stared at it. Thought about her at the kitchen table, leaning against my shoulder. Learning numbers. We can talk, I wrote. When you're ready to listen to. We met at a neutral coffee shop. She looked older, awake. I didn't know about the money, she said. Mom didn't tell me. I wasn't keeping score. I said. I was keeping promises. She nodded, eyes down. I shouldn't have said what I said. I didn't rush to fix it. Didn't pat her hand. Let the words sit until they softened. I'm not asking to go back, she said. I just didn't realize what it cost you. Costs aren't felt if someone else is paying, I said. We finished coffee. Hugged awkward, brief, like learning a new way to stand in the same room. Not a happy ending. An honest one. I could live with that. Thursdays I returned to the VFW. Walt nodded toward the river. You look lighter, he said. I am, I answered. Silence weighs less than pretending. Winter came. River steel gray. I bought a thicker coat. Learned to cook for one. Slept better. Not longer, deeper. Sometimes, I thought of the house on East Locust Street, the dining table, the head chair. I don't slide the chair back anymore. What I learned after 14 years and one quiet text is this: love without respect is labor. Silence, when chosen, is strength. If you've ever been quietly erased, told you belonged until you didn't, remember, dignity isn't loud. Justice doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just signs the papers, packs the truck, and keeps going.